Hello, girls and boys. Welcome to Storytime Fun. We hope you enjoy it. Today's story is out of the Walt Disney Storyland book. And our story today is called Perri, from the Walt Disney motion picture of Felix Salten's original story. Once upon a springtime, deep in a forest, a little squirrel was born. The mother named her little squirrel Perri. Perri's home was in the hollow of an oak tree whose top had long ago been torn away in a storm. The nest was softly lined with grass, and it was warm and dark. The baby squirrel enjoyed the warmth as she lay cuddled beside her brothers. At first, Perri did not even know that it was dark. Like many other newborn creatures, she could not see. Then one day, when her mother was gone from the nest for food, Perri opened her eyes. She could see. Though a small window in back of the nest, sunlight appeared. Perri crawled over to the window and looked out for the first time on a bright world. She saw the earth and trees and a little blue sky. She saw her mother picking brown seeds from the pine cone. She saw her father watching, sharp-eyed, from his nest in a pine. Then, suddenly, across the earth, a shadow fell, the long, slinky shadow of the marten. The marten was not so large and fierce an animal as other enemies of the squirrel, but he was more dangerous because he could climb a tree as well as any squirrel. "Save the babies quick!" warned Perri's father as the mother leaped for the hollow tree. "I'll head the fellow off." The father squirrel was quick, but he was not quick enough. The marten pounced. "How brave your father was," Perri's mother mourned. "He saved us this time, but the marten will be back. We must leave." One by one, she carried her children to the nest the father had left in the high branch of the pine tree. Perri was the last of the baby squirrels to be moved. "Let me climb to the nest by myself," she begged her mother. "Nonsense," her mother scolded gently. "A little thing like you, don't think that you are grown up because you've opened your eyes on the world." "It's a very lovely world," Perri said, staring around her. "It is," the mother sighed. "Yes, it's a lovely world, but not an easy one. We will never see your father again." Perri had many neighbors in the pine tree nest. At the tip of the branch, a hummingbird's family raised hungry beaks for the seeds their mother brought. In a nearby oak, a raccoon was coaxing her brood down to the ground. And not far away, some young skunks were taking their first wobbly steps. "It's time you children learned to get about," Perri's mother announced. How far away the ground looked when Perri made her first journey to the tip of the branch from her home to the hummingbird's nest. She could hang by her tail, too. Still, her mother said she was not old enough or strong enough to venture down to the ground and out into the world. One evening, the frisky little adventurer pranced out to the hummingbird's nest and peered inside. Perri meant no harm to the hummingbird, but the mother bird darted forward on whirring wings. Perri felt herself falling down, down, down. She fell to the soft, spongy earth. So this is what falling feels like, Perry said, not at all alarmed. I'll just explore a little bit before I climb back up to the nest. She frisked and danced along the warm earth until she came to the bank of a swift stream. Perry had heard of this creek where all the grown-ups came to drink. I think I will have a sip of cool water myself, said Perry. Just then a woodpecker called a sharp warning. The marten! Perry started for a tree, but the marten was close on her trail. What should she do? Jump in the creek, you silly little squirrel, cawed the blue jay. You can swim if you try. Martens can't. Perry plunged boldly into the swift water. The marten stood on the bank and watched her swim. How furious he was when he saw her reach the opposite bank. Perry was safe, but wet and forlorn. She longed to go home, but not for anything in the world would she risk the journey alone. She was wondering what to do when a warning squirrel bark came to her ears. Close by, the great paw lifted to pounce was a giant creature more terrible than a marten. Perry leaped up a tree and sat trembling on the slippery branch. Oh, I'll give that wildcat a chase, a voice said as a young boy squirrel swung down by his tail. Watch me, I'm Poro. Perry was too frightened to watch. She closed her eyes, shivering until she heard the hungry wildcat slink off. He's gone, Poro called. Come down and we'll have a feast. Proudly, he led the way to a hollow log, half buried in pine needles. He showed Perry his store of pine cones and seeds. Is this where you and your family live? Perry asked in surprise. After all, the proper place for a home was in a tree. Don't have a family, can't be bothered with a nest, Poro answered. At night, I just sleep on the branch of any of my pine tree. Yep. Everybody has to have a home, Perry said. I intend to build one at once. But finding a place for a home was not easy. Perry discovered a hole in a nearby tree, but when she looked, an old bearded flying squirrel drove her away with a flick of his tail. She found a lovely rotted stump, but a family of woodpeckers lived inside. At last, she found a hole in an aspen tree. She lined it neatly with grass and leaves, then popped her head out and looked around. Darkness was creeping over the forest, but Perry was safe. She curled up inside her new nest and went to sleep. The heat of summer covered the forest before Poro decided to build a nest for himself. He threw a few twigs and bits of bark together and invited Perry and her bird neighbors to see his fine new home. The jay looked at it and screeched. Ha ha! Even the magpie builds a better nest than that! Poro paid no attention to the blue jay. Up the tree he went and into the nest. Then he fell right through the bottom and tumbled back down to the ground. Even after the nest was mended, Poro was too adventuresome to stay in it. On a midsummer's eve, when the moon was high, Perry looked out from her nest to see an owl perched on a limb. He was eyeing Poro, who had decided just then to get a drink of water. Danger! Perry called. The owl swooped down, and Poro barely had time to escape into his hollow log. There he stayed until the owl flew away. Perri and Poro frolicked and played together through the long summer days. They stored acorns and fresh pine cones in the hollow log without exactly knowing why. The flying squirrel was hoarding too, and grumpy old Scarface, the black squirrel. The birds began to talk of making journeys. Perri and Poro hardly listened. They danced about through the red and gold autumn leaves, their little jaws bulging with nuts to store in the hollow log. Suddenly one evening, Perri was startled by a loud noise she had never heard before. Poro was leaning against an oak, just as surprised and frightened as she was. "Did you hear that, Perri? I wonder what it could be," said Poro. Then they heard the noise again. The jays and the crows, the only birds left in the forest, fluttered and screamed. A light flashed, followed by a louder noise than before. Poro dashed for his hollow log, and Perri scrambled after him. There was another peal of thunder, and Perri saw her treehouse bright with flame. The fire spread, and all the animals began running from the smoke and the flame. Smoke tickled Perri's nose, and she and Poro followed the other animals to the creek. They plunged into the water and swam to a log. A weasel and a raccoon were clinging to the log. The wildcat floated by. They paid no attention to the squirrels. Enemies and friends huddled together against the enemy of them all, fire. At last it began to rain. The fire died away, but all night Perri clung to the log in the creek. At dawn she crept to the land and to her burnt-out nest. Poro's nest was gone too, and he refused to make another. The hollow log was good enough. But Perri was a neat housekeeper with twigs and brown rustling autumn leaves. She bravely began to build again. The days grew short, the nights grew long and cold, and one morning as the sun came up, Perri was awakened by Poro. "Come look," he called to Perri. "The beaver is making a dam. He's got his whole family helping him build the bridge over the big water. Let's watch. He's building it from one bank to the other." All day the two squirrels watched the beavers at their work, but as the short day ended, the shadows of night came. Perri saw a frightening thing. The marten stood on the opposite bank, eyeing her hungrily. "Danger! Danger!" Poro called. Perri was too terrified to move. The marten began to cross the bridge the beavers had built. Carefully he moved, putting down the first one paw and then another. Soon he would reach the opposite bank. Suddenly the beaver dived underneath the dam. The twigs and branches heaved and swift current of the stream. Perri found her voice again. "He can't swim. Martens can't swim. He will drown," she cried, and she leaped into the tree beside Poro. The squirrels raced from treetop to treetop, feeling the joy of being safe. But their delight lasted only a few days. One morning, Perri woke to see fat white flakes falling softly in front of her door. The whole forest was white, piled high with snow. The only creatures she could see stirring were the rabbits and the deer. Will the world stay like this?" Perri wondered as she sat there shivering. She called Poro, but he did not answer. She was too sleepy to go down and find him. Later, she said to herself. Now, I'll just take a little nap. And she rolled up in her tail and slept. Through the long winter, Perri slept, or woke drowsily to eat and sleep again. Sometimes she dreamed that she was frisking in the trees with her friend Poro. Poro was asleep, too, in his hollow log, and so were the raccoons and the skunks and the badgers. All winter, those animals slept, while the other animals, the rabbits and the deer, ran swiftly over the silent snow. There came a day when the sound of birdsong filled the forest. Perri opened her eyes and stretched. As she heard the song, she yawned and looked out at the world. The snow was almost gone, and here and there little green things were sprouting. The sun was warm. It was spring. Yay! She heard a call, Poro's voice. Yay! There he was, hanging by his tail from the limb of his pine tree. With a leap and a bound, Perri was in the treetop. Poro raced after her. From branch to branch, from tree to tree, she darted to the edge of the creek. Across the water, all green and gold in the spring sunlight, was the home of her childhood. She danced across the beaver's bridge, running straight to the tree where she was born. Her family was no longer there, but it did not seem to matter. Perri was grown up now, and Poro was with her. They found a store of nuts which Perri's mother had left behind in her nest, and they both ate hungrily. We must get busy at once and build a nest, Perri said. Whatever for? Poro asked. Whatever for? Perri scolded happily. For babies, of course. I shall take this hollow tree, I'll line it with grass and leaves. Poro folded his paws across his chest. Build away, Perri, he said. I'll keep intruders away from the nest. He looked around at the greening earth. It's a lovely world, Poro said. Yes, it's a lovely world, but not an easy one, Perri answered, just as her mother had a whole year ago. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.